there, it's Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. Today I'm going to show you what just one mask and one stamp is able to do, and this is going to be really easy cards, but both of them end up looking, I think, really gorgeous. So not complicated at all, and just really effective looking cards. So I have this butterfly stamp set here from Stampendous. I think this one has been discontinued now. It's an older one. However, any stamp that you can put in here is going to work. There are so many that would work well. Then I also have some Masking Magic from Gina K, and you guys have heard me talk about this before. I love this one because it holds up for so long with so much ink on top of it, and it doesn't lose its stickiness. It never ever bleeds through, and I can keep these masks for ages. So that's the first thing that I'm going to do. I'm going to create the mask that I will use for both of my cards today. I'm using some VersaFine Onyx black ink to stamp down on some of the Masking Magic, and then just for longevity, I'm actually going to set this with some clear embossing powder. You don't have to do this step. Again, I just think this makes the masks last even longer, which is a great thing for me. So I just set that quickly. It heat sets really fast because it's kind of a plasticky material, and then I'm able to fussy cut around my butterfly. As I said, any image here, you could use a heart, you could use a flower, you could use a balloon, you could use anything you want. I have actually linked a couple of other butterfly stamps that are very similar to this down below in case you're looking for something similar. But you may already have this stamp set or something else in your stash already. So I'm going to stamp this down in some VersaFine Clear pigment ink. This is the medieval blue color. It's kind of like a cross between a bluey purple, a really dark bluey purple kind of color, and I really like this one. So I'm going to be pretty much using this just for my first card. I stamp this butterfly kind of on an angle a little bit, and then I'm going to take some Golden Meadow VersaFine Clear ink. Now, of course, this color is pretty much true to what is on the lid of the ink, so I don't want that color to compete with the blue that I've used for the other butterfly. Once I have popped the mask on top of my butterfly ready to go, then I'm going to ink this up, and then I'm actually going to stamp off once and just use second generation. So remember, with every ink that you have, and particularly with pigment inks, because they stamp so crisply, that you can get a really gorgeous second and if not third color from one color of ink pad. So once I had checked out that the stamping off is going to be the correct color that I needed, I am going to fire away and get started with filling in this background. As I said, I don't want the background to compete with that main gorgeous butterfly. So all of the stamping that we're going to be doing this morning is pretty much one layer, but it's going to end up looking really good. I really like how both of these turn out, and as I said, they're very simple, not too complicated, just gorgeous, straightforward card making. So I'm just going to pop this butterfly around about, and then once I'd kind of done this, I realized that perhaps I could have stamped off the butterflies on a more useful sheet of paper and in a more useful way, but you know, we live and we learn, and that's okay too. But this is a good trick to remember around second generation stamping. You get a whole nother tone of that same ink pad color without having to store or purchase another ink pad. So that's always a bonus. And as I said, pigment inks work really well. Dye inks, some of them will work well depending on the impression. And then some of the hybrid inks will work okay. You just really need to experiment with the type of ink pads that you have and see what kind of second generation stamping or even third generation that you might get. Now once I pull off that mask, you can see that all the other stamping is behind our main focal butterfly, and yet we still have a one layer card. So I'm going to put this one aside for a little bit and work on it again soon before we make our second card front. This one here, I'm going to stamp in the exact same medieval blue. When my stamp is a bit bigger, I prefer to kind of pop it down on my desk and take the ink pad to the stamp. That way I can kind of almost check that I have good coverage of ink on the stamp as well, rather than just kind of hoping that I've got it all covered. I'm going to pop some clear embossing powder on this. In fact, I just have the sheet of the clear embossing powder beside me so I can dip projects in and out of it, because I made quite a few projects this morning using this one mask. That mask up in the top of the screen lasted the entire morning. I probably used it on and off 30 or so cards and card fronts and all sorts. So it was well and truly used, and I was still able to put the backing back on it and put it back in with the stamp set after I was done. So that's what I really appreciate, that the masking magic lasts so long, and especially since I went to the effort to fussy cut out the image. So this one here, I have the main butterfly in the middle, and then I'm going to use second generation stamping again and stamp it a little bit above, kind of about almost halfway or so, and then ink it up again, stamp off again, and then stamp below the main butterfly as well. Then I'm going to pull off the mask and pop it on that one that we just stamped below it, and again, ink up again, then stamp off so that we get the second generation lighter color. If I had used the full strength ink, I think it would have competed too much again. We really want that middle butterfly to stand out, rather than kind of taking all of the focus away from just that center one. So this is the way that I'm going to do it today, and that is kind of that card done, but just wait until you see what we do with it to turn it into a full card. And I love the way that this one turned out. Again, really simple, but I think both of these are super effective. It also leaves a nice really little bit of shine on because we heat emboss this with some clear embossing powder, so that one stands out a little bit more because of that too. I have a couple of strips here. These were left over from another project. One I'm going to add some shaded lilac distress oxide ink to, and just going direct to paper is just a quick way to kind of go about it. This one, I started off using Villainous Potion, but after a couple of swipes, I realized it wasn't quite the color that I was after, and it was actually different from the Medieval Blue. So I thought I would just keep it the same, and I just again went direct to paper with the Medieval Blue and popped that over, just to get a couple of strips of these because everything is going to be coordinating that way. And then I have my double-sided adhesive sheets. These ones are the scrapbook.com ones. Because I was not die cutting these, then this is why I use these thicker double-sided sheets rather than the stick-it double-sided sheets that I use if I am die cutting. These ones you can cut perfectly well with trimmers and guillotines and all those sorts of things. So it does cut fine if you're die cutting. I just find I have more success with the thinner stick-it double-sided adhesive if I am die cutting. Then all I want to do is cut some really thin strips. I also cut some thin strips of some gold mirror cardstock as well. However, I didn't end up using those. They weren't quite right, but you can see that on the right hand side of the screen there. So these just have double-sided adhesive on the back of them, and that just makes it easier for when I want to pop them down in a minute. So I'm can't really say I measured these specifically. I just made them nice and skinny, and I just want them to be the same on both sides. So that's all good. And then I did the same with the darker one, the Medieval Blue color as well. If you are interested in any of the supplies I have used in today's video, they will all be linked in the description box below this video. There's lots of different little pieces of information down there as well if you're looking for it. Also, if you have been inspired by this video or any other of my videos really, I would love to see your projects. I really love to see what you kind of turn and do with the techniques that I show you. So if you would like to show me, the easiest way to do that is to post photos on Facebook, and we have a group called Come Crafting with Natasha. I will leave a link to it down below, or you can just search on Facebook and join. Make sure that you fill in the couple of little gaps there. That way we know that you're not robots trying to get into the group, and then that we have a really amazing supportive community. We are so lucky, and we are growing fast, and just a really lovely place to be and spend time and browse all of the wonderful card making cards and projects and things that people are sharing on there. So that is also a link to that in the description box below if you are interested. Now here I'm going to use the All Occasions Paper Rose sentiment set. This one's really quick go-to and easy, and you can see on my butterfly card front I cut it down so that it was just like a little strip there, and then I popped a shaded lilac and then the darker purpley blue color, a thin little strip of each one down the side there, and I think they just really finished it off. It kind of is almost both colors brought to the outside edges. Now this is kind of unnecessary, but just one of those finishing details. I have these lace edges dies, and I always keep any that I've pre-die cut in the back there. I have my little sentiment strip ready to go, but I just thought it needed a little bit more to stand out. So I'm going to take one of those little die cut lace edges that I already have, and then I was going to do it in white, but it kind of faded a little bit. So I'm actually going to colour that with the same dark blue, the same medieval blue that I've used all throughout. I try not to introduce any new colours once I've kind of got my colours sorted. That way I just feel like it keeps it all coordinated, and I'm not going to be kind of drawing the eye away from anything in particular. I'm going to pop that little bit of lace edging down the bottom. It's just a very, very little detail. You honestly don't have to do that at all. Then I just use my fussy cutting scissors, my little cutter bee scissors, to cut off the tops and bottoms, those little edges from the strips and things. Cut around my little sentiment, and then it's still got a little bit lost on there when I kind of put it on. So I'm actually going to pop it onto a little piece of vellum. So when I kind of hold it here, it looks like it gets a little bit lost. Everything's a bit white. And it just doesn't stand out quite enough. So this is where I kind of decided to change my mind and just pop this on a little piece of vellum. Vellum is going to kind of dull the background just enough so it stands out a little bit more. And I think that just that one little bit of vellum makes all the difference. And I don't want it to cover up any of the edges, so I make little marks where I need to cut it, and then I can pop some liquid glue behind there, and it will be hidden behind the sentiment, and I think that works out perfectly. So this just says, sorry for your loss. Unfortunately, I needed 2 sympathy cards today, and that's what I decided to turn these into. This was what they were for. However, I think these could be made for any occasion, and of course you could change up the colors. You know, for a little girl's birthday party, you could make pinks and purples, and I mean all sorts of things. You could change it up to suit the occasion, but just using a similar technique. Now here I'm going to create my little matting layer without actually having to add an extra piece of cardstock. I was hoping to go direct to paper, but it does leave like a little lip there from the masking, from the low-tack tape, sorry. It leaves a little lip, so it's best to use a finger dauber or a little sponge or something like that to add in the colour. Again, I'm using the same medieval blue. I'm not introducing any more colours at this point, and I just use my little piece of mint tape, low-tack tape, over and over again so that I can create a little border to go around the edge, and this makes all the difference. It truly does, and it saves me having to add another layer of cardstock to my project as well. From there, there's just a couple more things that we can do to kind of take this card to the next level. Albeit it looks gorgeous as is. It is very plain and simple. It's pretty much one layer, and I like it as is. But to finish off the sentiment and to again help it stand out, because at the moment it's just a white strip of paper with black text, I'm going to colour a little piece for the background, use some liquid glue to pop my sentiment down on there. The same colour, I'm not introducing any new one still. And this is going to, again, just help it stand out a little bit more, then cut this out with a little border around it. Now, I think I get asked a lot about kind of finishing touches on a card, and it is all these extra little things like adding the little borders around. It's the things like adding in enamel drops. It's the things like adding a matting layer. It's the things, all those kind of little things. You might add glossy accents on top. You might add some Wink Stella or glitter pen to it. All these little finishing touches, which often are the things that kind of make the card come to life. Included in that is these little Nouveau drops. I have the silver, and I also have Morning Dew. Now this Morning Dew, although the bottle looks white, it dries completely clear. So I always with Nouveau drops or any kind of colour pops or anything like this, I always do a test piece, because sometimes they kind of splatter out the very first time you use them, if you've used them kind of not for a day or two. So I always do a test piece and make sure that they're going to come out nicely. So I've done silver on the big main butterfly. I dropped it there for a second, but luckily it landed the right way up. Then I'm going to use the Morning Dew one. So these will go on kind of whitish, and then I'll show you in just a minute as well. So at the moment they're kind of cloudy and almost kind of white looking, but I will show you in just a second once they are all dry, and you can see that they have dried completely clear. My camera's having a minute to kind of focus on these, but I'll get it to focus in just a second. And you can see that they have dried into nice little droplets to go down the backs of the butterflies. Not big details, they don't stand out hugely, but it's all those little things that people kind of look at when they see the cards. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I really look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks, bye!